0-2 teams, this video is for you. To win in week 3, you can't wait on waivers, but the good news is there's 5 wide receivers that are likely available in your league right now who can actually swing matchups in your favor this week. If this is your first time here, I'm Joe. I've done over 1 billion views in fantasy sports over the last decade, but more importantly, I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy leagues, and I plan to do the same for you in this video. But I always start with the top NFL news stories and why they matter for fantasy football so I can deliver some value immediately. Then I hit 5 of the best comment questions from yesterday's video. I found that's just the best way to reward smart comments and just boost engagement overall. And then finally, I dive into today's one key topic, aka the reason that you clicked, get you into exactly what you came for as soon as possible. So let's jump right into today's news. Big injury updates for fantasy managers coming out of week 2. Joe Burrow believed to have turf toe with some torn ligaments, could miss several weeks. Huge bummer, obviously. And Ian Rappaport confirmed the turf toe diagnosis, but also that Burrow was even spotted using crutches after the game. So not a week 1 thing, or not a 1 week thing, I should say. It looks like he's staring at a multi-game absence here. So if you drafted Burrow as your QB1, I think you just need to be proactive here. Check your waiver wire for some streamers, see what's available in your league, because missing just a few weeks from a top 8 quarterback can sink your entire season. More QB news out of New York, not the good type of news though. Justin Fields officially in concussion protocol. He left in the 4th quarter after a rough outing, never came back. Tyrod Taylor came in, moved the ball pretty well actually, even threw a touchdown. If Justin Fields can't clear protocol in time for next week though, Taylor could get the start next week against the Bucs. So if you're relying on Fields, I'm one of those people across a bunch of my leagues. You should be planning ahead. Concussion makes him like truly questionable at this point. So be active. Taylor would be kind of a sneaky 1 week streaming option, in my opinion. Maybe more of like the deep league super flex type of thing. But he's a guy that will use his legs, and this offense has been pretty functional to start the year. So we'll monitor this one. Commanders fans holding their breath for sure. Jaden Daniels day-to-day after an MRI on his knee. He looks like he was limping in Thursday's game at some points. And while we don't know like that full diagnosis yet, clearly something to watch. Dan Quinn should probably get us an update, I guess, later on this week. Daniels clearly a must start when healthy, but like what I'm worried about is if this knee starts to limit his rushing a little bit, his ceiling could definitely take a hit in fantasy. So monitor practice reports closely before locking him into your week 3 lineups. This is one that I'll definitely be watching closely, and I'll give you guys some updates as well as we progress through the week. So hit subscribe. All right, one quick piece of defensive news. Jadeveon Clowney signing with the Cowboys. Jerry Jones confirmed the move after their wild OT win against the Giants in week 2. And Dallas has really struggled in general just to generate pressure since trading Micah Parsons. So Clowney should help them right away, in my opinion. This doesn't directly affect fantasy football unless you're playing in some sort of IDP league or you're streaming defenses, but a stronger Dallas pass rush could mean more turnovers, sacks, all of those things for the Cowboys DST going forward. Also, I'm always monitoring these bad defenses with good offenses, because if the defense takes a step, less opportunities and garbage time for Dak, Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb to keep slinging the ball around. So yeah, monitoring defensive stuff like this pretty closely. Let's jump into some Q&A, some good ones for you guys. If you want your question answered by me, drop it in the comments below. Hi, new to the show. Pick 2, week 2, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, or Tet McMillan. Thank you. Yeah, in terms of like just how I want to structure these in general, I don't typically do a ton of like the actual like start sit type stuff in here. I'm happy to talk through trades and all of that stuff. If you're looking for more like start sit stuff, I'm considering actually doing like a second live stream on Sunday mornings where we actually like go through, do some like live Q&A versus just answering questions like this. So if you guys would be interested in me doing a second live stream, I always stream some DraftKings and FanDuel stuff every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So we could probably do like a 10 a.m. Eastern time directly after it. If you guys want some more Q&A stuff live, let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in showing up for a live stream on Sunday mornings for some start sit type of questions and answers. So wanted to highlight that quickly. Let's talk through some trade stuff. There's a couple other good questions that I flagged here. Would you trade Travion Henderson for Devonte Adams straight up? Yeah, I like this question because it was one of the ones that actually kind of made me think a little bit. I would prefer to have Devonte Adams, and that's coming from someone that loves Travion Henderson. The reality is there's still going to be a split there in New England. So Devonte Adams, what's done it for me is how used he's been in the red zone, and overall it seemed like Stafford really looking for him close to the goal line, all of that. So I think Devonte Adams is a pretty big priority for me. We'll get into some more trade targets, trade away, trade for type stuff later in the week. But yeah, my first instinct on this one is that it is very close, but I would prefer the Devonte side. Just got offered Sutton and J.K. Dobbins or Mike Evans and J.K. Dobbins for Zay Flowers. What do you think? Yeah, so like the 2-for-1 trades, you're going to see a lot of these, in my opinion, this time of year. I prefer the Mike Evans and J.K. Dobbins side versus the Zay Flowers side. I'm still a little bit hesitant, and maybe this is like not the best thing with like what he's been able to do over the first couple weeks. And obviously, this Baltimore offense has been absolutely humming, but yeah, I'm still a little bit worried about the volume in general, the passing volume for this team. They're not going to score 40 every week. So yeah, I would prefer the Evans side. I think I would even prefer the Cortland Sutton side, but would prefer Evans, I believe, just because of just grabbing two guys from the same team. Unless you're trying to stack something like that up, I think that makes sense. I prefer the Evans and J.K. Dobbins over Zay Flowers. Hope that helps, man. Just traded for Justin Fields as my QB2 in a 16-team IDP league. Yeah, so again, this video, I know it had Justin Fields on it as a guy to trade for. Apologies, guys, when it comes to injuries. That stuff really sucks, but just want to let you know, it sucks for me too. I have Justin Fields everywhere, so hopefully he can get back soon and get healthy. My family home league doesn't trade at all. Bunch of bums. Yeah, I just want to flag this one because this is like something I think we can all kind of relate to. Friend groups, like maybe you have some different leagues going on, multiple leagues, all of those things. Some are active in trade targets, tradeaways, all of that stuff, and some like don't trade the entire year. So I would say that like trying to get like this thing stirred up is every bit as much on you as it is other people in your league. Start to make conversation with other league or other teammates, other league mates, I should say. I think it's kind of up to you to get the ball rolling on that. If you want it to be an active league with trades, all of that stuff, try and make it fun. Sometimes it just like takes one or two trades and you'll see just like an avalanche of trade requests come in. You'll start to open those conversations early in the league or early in the year. Some people are a little hesitant for whatever reason, but I guess I wanted to flag this one because I think it's definitely up to us to make sure that it's a fun experience year round, trading, all that stuff. Bunch of bums. I agree. I love trading, but start poking some people, man. Be that annoying guy in the beginning of the year. It ends up doing a lot of good for just like the experience for everyone. Zay Flowers does this every year. I had that offense just isn't great. Yeah, so another Zay Flowers one, and we talked through Debo as well. Yeah, I'm with you. I like the Zay Flowers stuff in a vacuum, but I think he needs like the perfect outcome in these games to really get there. Debo, we'll see if I end up being wrong on that, being the safety valve for sure. He's looked pretty good through 2 weeks, obviously, but we will see. Javonte Williams could be the Gus Edwards type just to punch in at the goal line. Yeah, I'm willing to say that the Javonte stuff I probably missed on this offseason for sure. It does look like he's going to have some touchdown upside in that offense. He hasn't looked great to me personally, but that might not matter. It's all about volume, getting him in situations where they're on a team, at least that's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And he's done a great job so far this year. He's broken some big plays for them. So yeah, we will see. The jury is still out, in my opinion, on this backfield, but we'll be monitoring, my man. Appreciate you checking in. Another trade. Should I trade Ricky P for Tyler Warren? I have Jettis, Higgins, Ridley. Yeah. This one wasn't as close for me. I like Tyler Warren. I guess still worry a little bit about the passing volume. So I prefer Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings being back and making an impact, all of that. With the injuries we have in San Francisco, I still think that this could be a pretty condensed target share for at least a little while. So yeah, I prefer Pearsall in that trade, my man. Love my team minus AJ Brown. Would you trade Brown for Henderson? Yeah, I mean the AJ Brown FUD is wild. I've been seeing a lot of people kind of talk about this too. I absolutely still would rather have AJ Brown on my team than Travion Henderson. So we will see. I think those were the main ones that I flagged. Again, if you want your questions answered, drop them below this video. Let me know if you want to see a live stream going into this Sunday. Maybe we'll start those up in addition to the DraftKings ones. Would love to, I guess, chat with you guys a little bit more directly on live. Also, if you want more direct access to me, my membership, my year-round fantasy membership, the Fantasy Accelerator, fantasyaccelerator.com. Check that out, link in the description. Everything you need to dominate your league is in there in our community. We obviously have draft season, in-season, off-season, so we're right in the heart of our in-season product right now. So definitely check that out. And if you're not ready for that yet, top150free.com. You can get my top 150 rankings weekly for free. Just throw your email in here. I'll send them over. And this is the exact thing that I'm using to set my lineups as well. It's not near as detailed as the Fantasy Accelerator, obviously, but it's a starting point for you to get access to my rankings, all that good stuff. Cool. Let's get the whiteboard out. Today's one key topic: 5 must-add wide receivers to pick up in fantasy football. Let's drag us over here into a new section as we break this down. All right, so the first one, not a huge surprise as he's on the thumbnail, but let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins. Ravens DeAndre Hopkins. So he was one of the guys that we mentioned on last week, where we wanted to kind of see if this is going to be a trend moving forward or if it was one of those things where he was going to kind of let us down a little bit. But I like the idea of picking him up on waivers, and I'm going to tell you why. So the first thing is this offense in general, right? We know that the volume is going to be a little bit suspect on the passing side of things, but the Ravens scored 40 in week 1, 41 in week 2. Lamar tossed 4 TDs versus Cleveland. This is a touchdown-rich environment, but just in general, back-to-back 40 burgers. We have to admit at some point that there's going to be some fantasy goodness here for some wide receivers outside of just Zay Flowers. I know we just talked about Zay Flowers and my concerns. Realistically, that's just where you had to draft him to get a guy like this. But if you can get a guy like this in this situation on the waiver wire, that is something that I am interested in. So Henry barely made a dent in week 2. So the passing game kind of handled all of the damage for just the Ravens team in general, and just a high scoring offense with basically limited turnovers, and really these guys turning limited snaps into real fantasy points very quickly is what we're focused on if we're trying to find some upside on the waiver wire. Maybe Zay Flowers goes down and we get DeAndre Hopkins basically vaulted into another role. So there's been multiple guys that have done at least something in the passing game. I mean, Lamar's thrown a bunch of touchdowns, right? But I do think that in general, the guy that I do want is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. He could have had another touchdown this game. He ended up being down at the 1. So he could have 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks, which is pretty exciting in general. I know that we were looking through kind of this box score, and you probably saw some garbage time on red zone, all of that. But we did end up seeing Devonte Walker score 2 touchdowns in this game as well on 2 catches. I still think that Hopkins is the one that I prefer on the waiver wire this week. And to me, this is a crazy number, but 4 for 99 and 2 on just 19 routes. So what happens if they actually decide to scale him up a little bit, right? So through 2 games, just 19 routes. That's actually kind of, in some ways, a concerning thing, obviously, but he's at an elite route per, efficiency per route rate right now. It's only a matter of time before guys like that start to see more usage. So week 2, he was 2 for 2. And I think just in general, someone like this, 64 yards on 2 catches, 2 touchdowns. Like I said, he could have had 2 touchdowns. It's just really, it's a small role as of now, but we want to try and grab guys on the waiver wire that have room to grow, basically. So as the pass volume kind of ticks up, is this a small role now that ends up trending in the right direction quickly? And I think there's a chance that it could, with the pass volume ticking up a little bit. So Baltimore in general, something that we talked about in the offseason, they are going to run a ton of plays, 63 plays per game right now. 54.5% were called a pass. So that is a little bit of a shift towards the air. So that's something that we should be monitoring, because we always want to revisit our narratives, right? So maybe the Ravens end up being a little bit more of a pass heavy team at times this year. We'll see. As of right now, I think the team kind of views Hopkins more situationally, but the efficiency plus any uptick in routes at this point, that's the type of edge that we're trying to buy on the waiver wire. And those are the type of guys that we want to grab from elite offenses. So I think the question is this a sneaky ad, even though this team has put up 40 points in 2 weeks in a row? I think the question is that we have to answer, is there even any scenario that this offense ends up pass heavy at times this year. I think there is a scenario where we could see them pass more than last year for sure. There's definitely room for that. I think that just really adds upside to any bench player that you would be picking up, especially one that's just an elite per route output type of player early on. So I think that if we're going to continue to have him looked for in like high leverage targets downfield, but also in the red zone, if we see any sort of tilt towards the passing game, it could be like a nice stash in certain formats. So I think there's going to be some volatility here. Obviously, Zay, Bateman, the tight ends, obviously they're kind of going to lead the target share here, but his efficiency should warrant more looks over time. So that's what I'm focused on with DeAndre Hopkins. Let's talk about number 2. Player number 2. It was one of those games that was probably one of the most fun games that I've watched in quite some time, and he was a big part of it. You guys know what I'm talking about? Russell Wilson chucking it deep to Wan'Dale Robinson. This is a name that like I was at times a Wan'Dale truther, right? Like over the years, he was like one of those guys in DFS that was always like a little bit too cheap for the role. He was kind of getting a lot of those safe targets, but now he's getting completely different usage that I want to talk through with you guys. So Wan'Dale Robinson on the waiver wire is a wide receiver that I'm strongly considering, right? So in week 2, target magnet. 8 catches on 10 targets for 142 yards and a TD against Dallas. So to me, that's immediate proof of like that high volume role that could be live in this offense in addition to someone like Neighbors, obviously. So of course, this game, there's like an asterisk here, did go to OT, but that usage spike I still think is relevant and still matters for week 3 and those decisions. So Russell Wilson had the offense absolutely humming, right? So this game ended like 40-37, I believe. So that environment didn't look quite as bleak as it did in week 1. The thing that I'm looking at here is really just the first read. And the first read share. So really just like designed volume is what we'll call it. Because not all players get that, right? So 34.8% is the number that I want you guys to focus on here. And that number is the first read share of this offense. So that's, realistically, like there are plays literally built to find him in this offense right now. 21% target share. So even in like that like crazy dud that they had in week 1, he still went 6 for 55. So that's like, to me, like that's a little bit of a first read, yes, but also that PPR floor that you're buying on the waiver wire. I really like that, especially like when you're trying to get guys that can give you usable weeks. Maybe you have some injuries. Maybe you're just trying to find a new flex, all of those things. We talked about at the beginning of the video, maybe you're 0-2 and you're realizing that your wide receiver depth just isn't where it needs to be. He has some red zone looks as well, so not just empty catches, all of those things, right? So to me, that makes sense. And one thing that I always want to remind us of is that volume is what's actually sticky. So I know we talk about efficiency, but when I can, I always want to default to volume. Efficiency is useful, of course. Like we want big plays. We want guys that are going to actually do something with the targets that they're getting. But the real thing that matters here is just the volume and the role, right? So even last year, 140 targets, 10th in catches, despite less than 700 yards. So to me, that's probably a quarterback problem in some ways, right? Maybe less of a scheme problem, but I think the efficiency critique is fair. But I think this is a completely new type of offense, a new wide receiver room in general. So I'm more bullish than I think most are on this offense right now. So the pass rate projects to be like closer to like 60, 62%. And it's supporting like that steady short area volume type player, which is exactly what Wan'Dale is. So to me, the question is he a must add? And I think this is one of those ads where it depends on your league. So in PPR, that is not how you spell PPR. In PPR, I would say yes. He's a must add for me at this point. So he's only rostered on about 29% of teams right now across fantasy. So to me, I think that we lock in kind of this weekly floor We could stream him aggressively if we need to. I think that we should probably expect pretty modest ceilings here, but the design plus like the stability in general of like how he is going to rack up catches, I think is pretty repeatable and definitely a value in full PPR. One of the things that we should flag here is the Giants do have one of the toughest passing schedules in the entire league. So you really are kind of drafting him for that volume first type of start, not necessarily boom weeks, if that makes sense. But I like Wan'Dale quite a bit. The third guy that we're going to talk about, wide receiver that we should be considering adding on the waiver wire. Who do you guys think it is? He's in 20% of leagues. He's on a team that has been on absolute fire. A team that's got a great defense as well. A team that there's some options, but they're a little bit banged up. And now they're even more banged up. It's Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs. So he led the team in routes in week 1. To me, I think the thing we should focus on here is that Doubs has basically become the most trusted wide receiver in this offense right now. So I would say the trust factor is what we should focus on here. And I think he's the most trusted, at least. So I think there's proof that we've already seen that like the wide receiver coaches still trust him a ton. Second on the team in targets. Despite Reed's health. So we'll talk about that in a second. But the Packers' passing volume, I think, is likely to rebound this year. We talked about that a little bit with having a little bit less bullishness towards Jacobs. But I like this Packers offense to take a step this year in pass volume. The other thing is he's been a pretty consistent TD producer when called upon. And we can't always say that about these like fringe wide receiver ads. Like I said, he's in 20% of rosters right now. So even like low volume keeps him like, I guess, keeps his ceiling intact because he's going to be used in scoring position pretty frequently. So he caught 3 of 5 targets on Thursday night. So there wasn't a crazy amount of volume there, but we do have efficiency. So TD producer and efficiency. So almost like the complete opposite of Wan'Dale in some ways. But the thing that really matters here is the Reed injury. I think opens the door to potentially more volume. So if we already have the efficiency, we already have the red zone usage. One of the things that we want to do on the waiver wire is find room for growth. So finding players that actually could be worth a lot more if they do see more wide receiver targets. They can start to absorb some of those vacated targets. And Doubs is already the one that's topping this team in routes. So I think that the coaches are going to lean on these like trusted veterans over some of the unpolished rookies that they have, younger players, all of that. They do have a young wide receiver room in general, but I still think that the coaching aspect of it does matter when we have a key injury. So I think the question is he like a plug and play guy? Is he a plug and play like wide receiver 3 on fantasy teams right now? And I would say yes. Doubs is more of like a volume and touchdown streamer who can, I think, jump right into your flex wide receiver 3 range. I think he's a must add while Reed sits in particular. Let's talk about Alik Haimanor. I can't say his name. I really have tried really hard to learn this. So I wrote it down. Alik Haimanor. Just roast me in the comments. I'm sorry. I'm the absolute worst. I'm the worst. You're the best. You're good looking. I'm not attractive. All of those things. Let's just call him Alik today. Alik Haimanor. I'm still butchering this. All right, let's get into this. The important thing is the details here that we're going to discuss. So, Alik, heavy usage from day one, right? So if we're looking at a guy that could make a massive impact, we want guys that are seeing very specific volume floors, like we've talked about, have very specific roles in terms of scoring touchdowns. But one of the other things that I think makes a lot of sense is splash plays. Like a key role downfield. So basically just knowing that there is a ceiling here, I think is super valuable, obviously. So 4 catches, 6 targets for 56 yards and a touchdown. He had that nice one-handed 23-yard grab. Improvise on that red zone score with Cam Ward. So I think that shows something that we should be paying attention to as well. 15.6 fantasy points, despite the Titans losing to the Rams, I think is a nice ceiling projection for him going forward. So I like that. Heavy usage from day one. So 25% target share, but the number that I care about is right here. So 48. 48% air yard share. 36.8% first read share in week 1. So top 25 in route win rate as well. So really was strong in week 1, and then in week 2 gets in the end zone, all of those things. I think that the thing that matters here though is opportunity, because this room is pretty thin. It's a thin wide receiver room. There's not a ton there, right? Behind Ridley, I think the depth is bleak. I think that's a nice way to put it. I think the wide receiver 2 job is basically wide open. Tyler Lockett's efficiency is absolutely cratered. It's something that we knew. 1.1 yards per route run. He turns 33 this year. Some of these guys really fall off a cliff fast. So we'll see. The Titans boosted offensive line, 3 new starters. I think that was kind of built to stabilize that rookie quarterback investment that they have made as well. So these guys that can get downfield, we want to build around these strong offensive lines. We also want to build around all the reasons that we liked Ridley this year, and it's the Cam Ward accuracy downfield and being one of the better guys coming in this class at pushing the deep ball. So to me, it's still technically like a wide receiver 2 stash. And I think that, like, in general, like, the ceiling spikes will be wide receiver 2 level, right? So I think this depends on Cam Ward. What can he, like, he's been struggling overall, right? I think that just in general, though, like, he needs like that go-to downfield guy. So if it ends up being Ridley, great, but maybe it's not. So I think that the volume is what we need here. But if he's doing this in weeks 1, 2 in an empty wide receiver room, like an offensive line that's improving, all of those things, I think there's a chance that Alec Hyomanor ends up being a guy that I learned how to say his name before long. Promise for the next week's video, I will learn how to say his name better. Okay, one more guy. I think you guys probably know who this one's going to be. He's someone that we talked about a lot last year at times, but Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman. We're 2 weeks into this experience with Joe Flacco 2.0, but back-to-back TD games for Cedric Tillman. Week 1, 5 catches, 8 targets, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Only 2 catches in week 2, but still had 7 targets. So I think that the role is still pretty sticky. Multiple games of 7+ targets. I think that really just shows the trust that we're going to get from Flacco. And now we have proof that it's not just like a 1-week fluke. So I think he's worth considering as long as Joe Flacco is under center to me. The wide receiver 2 role was already his. It's already been his, right? So after the Amari Cooper trade last season, 80% plus of the snaps, 8+ targets per game before, and really just like the volume behind Jerry Jeudy, but really ahead of everyone else in the wide receiver room for quite some time. So he's kind of like that perfect wide receiver 2 profile in a pass-leaning offense at this moment. So they're willing to feed him. They're willing to feed him. Cleveland's projected for kind of like a 60 to 62% pass rate each week with spike potential if Flacco keeps starting. So week 2, that loss, 45 pass attempts. So we got a high volume environment already showing up, and they're going to play with a little bit of pace as well. So that means more consistent routes, more consistent target share, all of that. So to me, he's the stash that you need before he pops. Back-to-back CD games, maybe that is considered a pop, but like the 7+ target role, like this could get nutty fast if you're not willing to go grab him. He's in 40% of teams right now, like 40 to 45% of teams. If he is on your roster, I still think he's one of the best guys that you can add at the wide receiver position. While Flacco is under center, I think he's a locked in wide receiver 3 flex play with a little bit of upside. I think there's a chance that his ceiling and his volatility end up being more of a positive. So more of a feature, less of a bug. That's it. Back tomorrow with top running back waiver pickups. So hit subscribe, drop a comment. I read every single one. See you then.